Good morning, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be with you today, and such an honor to speak before individuals who I truly have come to recognize, to appreciate, and respect, not just because of who you are, but the body of work that you bring to our community. When I know that people like the distinguished faculty here at UM who concentrate your learning, your teaching, your research around those issues and themes that bring nobility and dignity and humanity, particularly to children in our community, I am certainly humbled. But then there are individuals like Judge Leifman, who is here, and Trudy Novicki, who is here, and Dr. Feldman, School Board Vice Chair, who are here. And they're here because we believe collectively that we share a fundamental responsibility of carving out common ground around what's really important in community, for children, and the adults that they will become. So I am honored and humbled to have been asked to provide some brief remarks to you today. I was a little bit confused because I was asked to speak to a very diverse group of people, and I asked, well, how diverse? And when you're in Miami and you talk about diversity, you know what to expect, right? Yes, there will be white, brown, yellow, all kinds of people in the same room, right? There will be, Native Americans and Hispanics and African Americans and Latinos. But then they said, no, that's not the kind of diversity that we're talking about. This is a rather unique group of people because you will have educators. And I said, well, I got those. I think I understand those. That's my tribe. But there are physicians, and I say, I know them too. Every once in a while I need them. I call on them. But then attorneys and judges. Now I got confused. Attorneys, judges, and doctors in the same room. So we needed somebody to mediate that, and we invited the social service providers to mediate and mitigate the potential conflict, right? And I think that it's remarkable that all of you traveling different journeys and pathways find time in your schedules, in your lives, to actually come together and collectively be mindful about building a better Miami. And certainly some in our community can choose to build a better Miami by investing in bricks and mortar, can choose to build our community strictly from an economic perspective, building gleaming white and tall, shiny buildings, forgetting that in the shadow of those buildings lies poverty and conflict, despair and disappointment, the likes of which you would find anywhere else in the country. Recognizing that this tale of two cities happens right here in Miami. Those who have and those who wish they had but right now do not, and do not know a way to be able to get that point where the same level of equity and access and fulfillment and happiness is par with everybody else. That's why I find power in this concept and this energy and this body of research and curriculum and teaching and acts and actions and ideas behind mindfulness. You see, if you do what I do as a teacher, as a superintendent, as a father, you recognize that the human body and mind are, in fact, very fragile, but resilient as well. And what I know as a teacher is that every one of the achievement gaps that I encounter in our public school system, every one of the learning deficiencies in terms of reading or writing, math, science, academic adequacies, those gaps, those deficits, are always preceded by opportunity gaps. Opportunity gaps. And opportunity gaps, if not mitigated in time, addressed, identified, and reacted upon, become academic gaps, achievement gaps. And those achievement gaps, if not caught on time and addressed adequately and aggressively intervened upon, always become economic and sociological gaps as our children evolve into adults. So that migration from early opportunity gaps, from birth to the first day they enter school, to the first day they exit school and they enter the so-called real life, if those gaps are not addressed, serious economic and sociological consequences happen to the children who then become adults. That is why, inasmuch as we strive to provide a great education, emphasizing the 3 R's of reading, writing, and arithmetic, we cannot forget the equally important 3 R's of respect, responsibility, and restraint. Respect for self and respect for others. Respect for the ideas we carry in our souls, our spirits, our minds, and our hearts. Have those ideas and thoughts reflected in our actions, not just sometime, but all the time. That is mindfulness, awareness, the ability and the power to reflect, to examine, to re-examine before we say a word or act with our own bodies. Responsibility and respect run together. That, the lack of respect and or responsibility, represents, in fact, one of those opportunity gaps. A lot of folks expect that every single child who shows up in our schools has been taught respect, responsibility, and emotional restraint, to not just offensively react to stimulus, but in fact digest and be calm and introspective. The shame of it is all is that they do not. Recognizing 73% of our kids come to school hoping to get maybe the one free meal that may in fact be the only meal from a broken home, a broken society, where the father, mother, or both of them may in fact be absent, where the cracking of gunfire in the street corner happens more often than the sound of the ice cream truck, where evidence of community, of parks, of churches has been shut down, and all that lingers is a liquor store and a pawn shop, where this child's friend may have already been shot or killed or injured, where drug abuse and mental disconnect are not the exception, but they are the rule. Those all represent opportunity gaps. And the impact early on in the lives of children, impressionable children, who are visualizing, who are witnessing, and are learning from the examples that the adults are providing them, can be, in fact, lasting. And then we expect in this state of ours that within a few weeks or a couple of years for all of those gaps to disappear as children sit in front of a computer and attempt to provide awareness and knowledge of reading or math content when we failed to provide them real-life experience learning. So their ability to navigate a curriculum that is academically focused and assessment-driven in an almost obsessive way without considering the psychological and mental health benefits of actually just teaching the child attention and focus, how to concentrate on that which is important, that which builds humanity and dignity and peace and love and awareness. Focus, the ability for them to, in fact, sit, recognizing who we are, focusing on our inner selves before we try to take anything from the outside in. The ability to, in fact, teach children how to reduce their own stress in very stressful, violent communities. That is an opportunity gap, particularly for those children whose lives from the moment they were born have been encircled by disarray and violence and stress. Our collective ability to, in fact, improve impulse control in children, teaching them that rapid reaction to a stimulus may in fact be negative. Teaching them the ability to differentiate between different actions and teaching them a better way to not only organize their thoughts, their spoken word, but their physical movement and action to themselves and to others. Lacking that, those represent opportunity gaps. Teaching and helping children develop emotional regulation. You see, I've never met broken children, but I've met systems and communities that break children's spirits, hopes, and opportunities. And the only way they decode that and the only way they can manifest what they've learned back is by demonstrating in a language that is so similar to what they see in their surroundings. It's like they're caught in a system and a box of behaviors and actions that they believe are normal. Therefore, they use that vocabulary of expression, which is hurtful and harmful, because they know no better. They don't want to do bad or to be bad, but they believe that that bad behavior is the survival tool of their own community. But we can teach them better if we take the time. If side by side with reading, we teach compassion. If side by side with math, we teach understanding. If side by side with science, we teach love and happiness and reflection. We're often too busy doing something else because the rat race that we're put on of teaching towards a test after another test that concentrate on that which we can memorize and repeat rather than that which we understand and can apply puts us in this environment where it seems that the competition of me against you and you against everybody else is the most important thing in life. But it isn't. And last but not least, the ability to teach children tolerance and compassion, leading to happier and safer environments. Trust me, schools today are still the safest environments anywhere in America. Despite the awful headlines that sometimes come across, and those are legitimate. When there is violence in schools, it makes the issue of youth violence much more real because schools are like these holy places where everything good should happen. We almost ignore violence in the streets applied to the same kids that we are shocked by when that same violence happens in a school. And we shouldn't accept that. We should be asking ourselves not only what are children learning in school, but what are children not learning or learning when they are out on the streets. During the mean killing hours between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m., what happens? They're hours for 7 hours and 20 minutes a day. What happens in the other 16 hours and 40 minutes? And out of those, assuming they sleep 8, which they don't, they sleep for 4 and play video games for 5. What happens then with the remaining time? Who is teaching them? Who is picking them up and showing them a different approach and a different reality? You see, unfortunately, few people are asking these questions, and even fewer are doing something about it. A lot of people talk about it. So many people talk about what it will take to save and grow a child, and they say so much, they actually believe they did something. Much like the folks up in Washington, D.C., everybody speaks so much about the problems we face, they convince themselves and they try to convince the rest of us that they're actually employing practicable solutions. But from words to deeds, there is the power of action, something that is often not seen, not only here in our community, but across our state and across our nation. So, 9 fundamental principles that I believe are equally important to academic demonstration and proficiency of our children. Very simple ones, and you know this is why you're here today. This is the sort of the flesh and the soul of mindfulness, something that can and must be taught not only to children, but to adults alike. Because I submit to you, we have many adults in our community who demonstrate emotional behavior par with that of children. Because even though they have grown and matured physically, intellectually perhaps, but emotionally, civically, ethically, and personally, they have not. They are in a social and emotional arrested development. And we see that. Now, society's response to that is not only fail to understand and identify early on those negative behaviors which are precursors to something much worse, even when those behaviors are detected, rather than really curing and addressing the individual, we apply consequences. We are a consequence-driven society. We are not a prevention-driven society. So we pay at a premium for the consequence rather than investing modestly in the prevention and early identification. We can talk about that as far as education is concerned. We spend a lot more money in terms of academic remediation of high school students rather than a safe, sound investment in early childhood education. It's a mockery of actually our state when we decide to proclaim that we have universal pre-K, but it's only 3 hours a day. What parent can, in fact, use that? What do you do with the other 3 to 4 hours that the parent is working, but the child is somewhere else? It applies to the criminal justice system when we spend so much more money in incarceration rather than education and prevention. Early identification of social mental issues demonstrated by children who will grow up balanced or unbalanced, typical or troubled. A state that spends $6,000 a year in K-12 education, but $36,000 a year in juvenile incarceration is a state that has lost its ways, is a state that is not mindful, is in fact mindless, is a state that does not recognize the humanity and the dignity of its children and of its adults. I am surprised if at the end of this conversation I'll be able to keep my job. So very quickly, 9 specific topics or principles that build, in my opinion, the basis for mindfulness. Number 1, the ability to teach and improve and help us individually and collectively to focus. Focus. One of the biggest challenges impacting children in school today is they lack the ability to focus. Now, we, as the intelligent adults that we are, we find solutions for that. We medicate them. If they can't focus, let's put them to sleep. At least they will not bother anybody else. That's the wrong approach. You cannot medicate. Maybe meditate a little bit more, because meditation may be, in fact, side by side with or as an alternative to medication, a better solution. But we invest so much in the remediation, so less in the sound and solid, historically proven and research-based approach. Secondly, mindfulness helps to improve relationships and relationship building. One of the biggest hindrances and challenges between relationships, between individuals, is the lack of focus, the lack of attention, the lack of even acknowledging presence, particularly now in our hyper-connected society, right? I mean, even I am a victim and a slave to it. I brought my cell phone up here now, not to text while I talk. That's not illegal yet. But it should be. And texting while eating should be illegal as well. And texting in the movie theater should be illegal as well. Not because it's necessarily dangerous, but because it's robbing humanity time. It's robbing minutes of actually existential living. I have been in many restaurants where I see entire families, father, mother, 2 children, the nanny, which in our community, if you have a nanny, they have to go to the restaurant dressed in uniform. Talk about robbing somebody's dignity, right? You know, going to a restaurant, you know, everybody wants you to know, I have a nanny, but that's the nanny because she dresses like a nanny. And the nanny, the kids, well, the kids, no, they're not texting. The kids, better yet, every kid, maybe a family of 3 or 6, everybody will have an iPad because they need to watch a movie at the restaurant. Why? Because the parents don't want to engage the kid because it's bothersome. So there is a surrogate. That is mindless. That is mindless. We are human beings. Our life force, our energy is socialization, is communication, is eye-to-eye encounters. It is not eye to text, text to eye. There's no need for that bridge. So this issue of improving relationships based on behavior modification, really putting the person who is in front of you, the focus of your existence for that period of time. This is important in teaching for that teacher's ability to navigate a classroom of 24 children, but still dedicating the personalized, differentiated attention to each, as well as simultaneously managing the collective, is also important. So mindfulness builds relationship. The third one is mindfulness is good for the body. Now, I'm not going to venture in this too far because there are physicians, researchers here that can actually decode for you this incredible but real connection between our genetic makeup, our physical reaction to situations, and the approach of those same acts through a mindful way. There is a scientific connection that is both input-driven as well as output-driven. But somebody else will establish that for you. But the ability to sit or to stand, to recognize, to decode, to be introspective, to reflect on the value of words and actions before we actually engage in them can make such a big difference. Something can be said in so many different ways with the same words, but mean dramatically different, reflective and powerful different meanings. And our rush to communicate, our rush to act sometimes put us in peril. Children and adults need to understand that. Mindful reduces behavior problems. I think that's evident, whether in the classroom, in the courtroom, in the hospital, the ability to employ specific strategies that can be learned to reduce negative, harmful, less than positive behaviors is something we need to wrap our hands and minds around. Memory. Mindfulness builds memory. You know, it's very interesting. My daughter, I have one daughter, and she is 23 years old. I just left her yesterday in Atlanta. She spent 2 months in Hawaii. She wanted to spend 2 years in Hawaii, but so did I. 2 months in Hawaii. And she interrupted her college studies, broke my heart, right? How many of you would be like terribly devastated? You know, send your kid to college, hoping to all great things to happen for her and around her. And 2 years in, she says, "Dad, I know this is very important to you, but I am the master of my soul, and it's not working for me right now. I don't know why I'm studying this, and I need to find purpose." And she found purpose through yoga. And she went out, took a break from college, and she has become a master certified yoga teacher. And yeah, go yogi. I Ashtanga my way to happiness these days like nobody else. So we're in Atlanta yesterday, and she comes by my room, and she says, "Dad, let's go to the gym." So I get myself dressed up, and we go to the gym, and I'm ready to like get to the, you know, the weight stuff. And she says, "Dad, no. I said, "We're going to work on your soul today. You don't need to, you look cute in that, but you don't really need it." So we sat there. She says, "We're going to sit much like we started today's session for 5 minutes and do nothing but do everything." Now, here's this 23-year-old girl who I believed I had taught her everything. And she is deconstructing now my awareness. She says, we're going to do nothing, but in the process, we're going to do everything. And she says, "Dad, I want you to close your eyes, sit, and clear all thoughts from your mind. Divest yourself of pressure, of idea, of concern, even pleasure. Think of nothing. It helps if you fixate your thought on a word, perhaps, and you repeat that word periodically, methodically, rhythmically. Pick a good word and just do it for 5 minutes." So 5 hours later, that's what 5 minutes felt to me, she allows me to open my eyes, and she says, "Tell me how you feel." And I said, "Well, I feel like a failure because you told me to do something like equivalent of if I told you right now, don't think about a red elephant for the next 30 seconds, all you would think about would be a darn red elephant. So he told me not to think about anything, and Alex, I thought about everything. Everything. I thought about when you were a baby to who you are now. I thought about Hawaii. I thought about college. I thought about Dr. Feldman, the school board, the school board, the school board. I thought about the school board a whole lot. I thought about kids and children and reading proficiencies and violence and peace and Africa and Ebola. I thought about everything. By the way, Ebola. You know, a reporter put a camera on my face recently, says, Mr. Carvalho, Ebola is a crisis. Are you prepared for the Ebola crisis in Miami-Dade? Michelle, you guys are great sometimes. And I said, you know, I don't know anything about an Ebola crisis, but I can tell you about the crisis of poverty, of neglect, of economic inequity, of detachment, of immigration, of unaccompanied adults. Those are crises right here in Miami-Dade. Ebola ain't one. But let me go back to my daughter. So Alex says, Dad, here's a recommendation. Next time you sit, and I want you to promise me that you will try, and I did it this morning before I came here, every single morning, as soon as you get up, you open your eyes, find a good place, and sit quietly, peacefully, at the beginning of the day for 5 minutes. And please try to do what I asked you to do today. Each day you'll get better at it. And each day you'll feel better about it. And then she said, Dad, and by the way, do it before you drink your third espresso coffee. It says, it doesn't work, just like now, when you've had 3 to 4 highly caffeinated Cubanos before you try to remove all thoughts from your mind. I think that's good advice. So improving memory is key. Helping us deal with stress and anxiety. I need not tell you the stress level of a lot of our children and their teachers, particularly in hard-to-teach schools, is extremely high and healthily high. Now, children deal with that stress, they cope with it, and we know what their defense mechanisms are. They are hardened. The stress level and the post-traumatic stress that children at the age of 7 and 8 demonstrate is comparable to that of war-tested vets upon returning to our country. A 7 to 8-year-old with a stress level and post-traumatic stress symptoms comparable to that of a soldier. What society are we accepting when that is the reality? Mindfulness reduces anger and aggression. So if stress and anxiety are present, but children and adults don't know how to deal with stress and anxiety, how to reduce those levels down, then more often than not, those same children and adults respond to stress and anxiety with anger and aggression. But there are substitutes. There are better ways of, in fact, developing the behavioral response methodology that we should expect of our kids. But don't expect them to learn it by themselves. They need to be taught. They need to be taught. Mindfulness improves health. The physicians in a room will teach you about that. But again, the connection is research-based. It is there. Now, unfortunately, there's a lot of money and power behind pharmaceutical responses or remedies to this. Therefore, the stage time that the chemical response or solution gets, much like the stage time and financial investment from government that incarceration gets versus prevention, is so appalling to us, but also so evident. We need individually and societally to deal with that. Nobody else will. We need to, through our power of vote and demand for a better approach to the woes that we see around us. And last but not least, mindfulness builds compassion and peacefulness. So let me close the only way I know how to close a conversation. and that is with wisdom from the field. As an American by choice, not by chance, as somebody who carries many labels in one single body in existence, somebody who got here, and when I talk about labels, trust me, and I'm going to go through them very quickly, poor, from an uneducated family, arrived here alone at the age of 17, so I was poor, I was an immigrant, I didn't speak English, so I was an English language learner. I do believe I did have a slight disability, or at least my wife and daughter tell me so. I was an illegal alien, which I resented back in the 80s, the terminology, because unless you show me a photo of a Martian in handcuffs, I don't really know what an illegal alien is. I feel much better these days that we're referred to as unaccompanied minors, which I was one. You put all of those elements together, and probably the chances of a young boy, a young girl, of surviving, of making it, are very reduced. One single one of those elements, poverty alone, can be a challenge that is hard to overcome for many. If you put all of these together, it's almost a recipe for failure. Particularly when you're born into a family, a caring family, that was not academically educated. My father had no more than the third grade education. He was a custodian. My mother, a seamstress, also with a third grade education. But what they lacked in academic formation, they made up with love, with peace, with values, with a nurturing environment. So much so that I was poor, but I did not know I was poor. Conversely, in our community right now, there are thousands of children who are poor and they know they're poor, who are poor and they taste it, who are poor and they resent it. We need to be better adults for them. So I leave you with this story from the field that I think is meaningful to you, and I repeat it as often as I can because it is my fuel for powerful change, using who we are, what we believe in, our values, our skill, our will, as we transform the society around us. And this is the story of TJ as I close. You see, when I became superintendent, there were a lot of schools and the threat of being shut down for performance, schools with 34% graduation rate. And the state of Florida, in its infinite wisdom, said, well, you know, school is the last beacon of hope in that community because we already shut down everything else. Let's shut down the school as well, rather than trying to improve it. So I became superintendent, and I made a determination. I actually threatened the state of Florida that there would be a greater chance of the Crown of Spain of reclaiming Florida than me of shutting down these schools. And I had no idea how I was going to do it, but you know, sometimes throwing the pebble into the pond and creating a wave, and then swimming towards a solution as fast as you can is the only way to approach the problem. So we went to work. And great things have happened, and today's conversation is not about that, but all of those schools soared. And right now, there isn't a single F-rated high school for the second year in a row, and the graduation rate in Miami has exceeded that of Broward, even though they are just one-third our poverty or diversity, and has, for the first time ever, exceeded the graduation rate for the entire state of Florida. But that's not my story or my point. I went to one of these schools, Liberty City Elementary, tiny little school, about 400 kids. The school went from an F to an A because we changed everything, because we believed, and we populated the environment with people who not only saw the challenges as an educational challenge, but saw the challenges as an opportunity to bring about a holistic solution that looks at the entire child. And the school sourced the success, and what do we as educators do to celebrate it? Well, we usually throw a party. And the party has to have food, and kids love pizza. Kids like money also, and I think there's power in financial literacy early on. And kids like cartoon characters. So I go to the school and I bring a big check for a small school, $13,000 in reward money for the kids and the teachers. And we bring Doki, this cartoon character from Discovery Channel, and pizza. So I tell the kids that here we have a check, and they applauded politely. I told them that Doki, the cartoon character, has shown up for them, and they really got excited. Then I told them there was pizza for lunch, and they brought the house down. When I told them that there would be pepperoni pizza, and I don't eat meat, they really went crazy. So this is an elementary school, and kids wear uniforms, and the uniform today was a white shirt. Now, pizza with tomato sauce on white shirt uniform in the hands of kindergarten students is indeed an artistic expression. So the event is over, and I'm walking up and down the cafeteria, the cafetorium, shaking hands with kids. And by the way, I have this way of me that I don't believe in speaking baby to kids. Actually, if kids understand as well, they must think that we are idiots. Because they hear us speaking normally to one another, but then when we speak to them, we try to speak like they do. And they must think, wait a second, you're 3 times my size, why are you trying to be like me? I'm trying to learn from you, you silly goose. But we do that all the time. I don't. I shake hands with kids. I expect them to meet me in the eyes. I acknowledge their humanity as they acknowledge mine, and until that happens, I don't let go. If they try to come at me with all kinds of fancy karate-type handshake, I say, whoa, 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 I want to learn that too, but first let me teach you one that is sort of universally accepted by everybody. Let's just do one of these before we do all kinds of things. And once we meet there and understand each other, then we can move on. So I'm shaking hands with boys and girls. And let me tell you, there's tomato sauce on the shirts. There's pepperoni in the hair. It's a cool thing. Come upon this one boy. And unlike all the others, I shake his hand, but he does not let go of mine. As a father, as a teacher, human being, if he doesn't want to let go of my hand, I shall not let go of his. And I let my hand be in his, and likewise. And I decide to sit next to TJ. TJ, before I say anything, he says, I am so happy today. I said, tell me why you're so happy, TJ. And he says, because I got pizza. And I said, that is great. Well, the school year is almost over. You must be elated because, I mean, look at your school. Great things happening. I am happy. I am happy school is almost over. And I'm happy that I'm going to go to the beach. And I said, it's fantastic, TJ. So I asked him, do you like the beach? Now, I need to tell you that TJ had been retained in 3rd grade twice. Opportunity gap. The wisdom of retaining a 3rd grader twice. Those are the acts and actions of people who do not know, care for what's really good for children. So he's been retained twice, so he's not a typical 9-year-old 3rd grader. He is an 11-year-old 3rd grader. As I asked him the question, do you like the beach? Because he just got done telling me that he's happy he's going to go to the beach. He lowers his eyes and then he looks back up at me. He takes his hand from mine and he says, I don't know, I've never been. The concept of a boy in Miami who was born, grew up, every morning smelling the salty, balmy air that blows across the Atlantic Ocean past the bay into Liberty City. He smells it. He almost tastes the salt in it. He hears about the beach and he sees a highway that quickly shuttles people from Miami International Airport to the beach, flies over his humble little project home. Flies over it high enough so that the people who are in their rental cars and buses hardly know what's down there. He sees the billboards proclaiming the sandy white beaches of South Beach. He knows about mangoes because he knows somebody called Kim Kardashian goes there. But he's never been. The sadness in that boy, and I talked to you about TJ and him going to the beach because what TJ is telling me, there is so much that I have not seen. There is so much that I do not know. There is so much that I have not felt. There are so many hugs yet to be realized by me. That is what TJ told me at that moment. So I leave you with these thoughts, with these hopes and wishes that you individually and us collectively know who the TJs are, emotionally, physically know who they are, and then believing that from the impossible to the inevitable, there's nothing but belief, skill, and will, that we use our wisdom, that we use the power of our conviction, and we use the will, the courage to do the right thing, and elevate children like TJ upon our collective shoulder so they can get to see and live and experience a horizon that stretches out far beyond what they can see from the streets, the corners where they are born, where they live, and where shamefully, unfortunately, many of them perish. Thank you, and have a fantastic day.